On today's bonkers.ie podcast, myself, Caoimhe, along with my colleague Fionn, will be finding out the best way for first-time buyers to get ready to apply for a mortgage in Ireland. We'll hear from Patrick Callan, a mortgage advisor from bonkers.ie, who'll provide us with the inside scoop on what lenders are looking for in their mortgage applicants. We'll also hear from Oliver Clarke, a first-time buyer who is currently looking to purchase a home. So welcome to the podcast, Fionn.
Thanks so much for having me, Caoimhe.
Now, today we are going to talk about how first-time buyers can get ready to apply for their mortgage. And before we begin, it has to be said that purchasing a home is a dream that the majority of us aspire to achieve in our lifetime.
Absolutely.
However, applying for and securing a mortgage is not as easy as it may seem. It can be really stressful, and the process to ensure that you have all the documents ready and the correct amount of money saved can really put a lot of strain on people.
Yeah, absolutely, Caoimhe. So it's not just the documents and stuff that are causing a lot of people hassle. As we all know, the European Central Bank's rates have increased a lot over the past year, and mortgage rates in Ireland are kind of increasing in conjunction with that as well. So that is deterring a lot of first-time buyers from starting their mortgage application process, but a lot of first-time buyers are also looking to get in on their process now as well to really lock in a rate. So that's why it's really important for first-time buyers to have all their ducks in order really to get that mortgage application process started.
As we know, getting a mortgage is probably one of the biggest financial commitments that most of us will make in our lifetime.
Absolutely, yeah.
And there's a lot of challenges that you will face during this process. But for the majority of prospective first-time buyers in Ireland, the biggest challenge that they're going to face is saving up for a deposit. I was looking into this, and according to the Banking Payments Federation of Ireland, €54,000 is the average maximised deposit a first-time buyer is expected to fork out on a home in Ireland.
So over 50k then.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a hefty chunk of money, and it's no meagre sum. And as a result, a lot of young people are really struggling to accumulate this money. And a prime example of this, Fionn, is when we look at the number of people in their late 20s and early 30s being forced to continue to live with or to move back in with their parents to save for a deposit.
Sure, look, I've been there and I've done that.
Yeah, so have I. And this money can take years to save. And this can be seen when we look at the average age of a first-time buyer in Ireland, which currently rests at 34 years old. And this is a sharp increase if we look at nearly 20 years ago in 2006. The average age for a first-time buyer was 29.
So there's been a big sort of shift in these last 20 years, really.
There has. And my question, Fionn, is why? So why are prospective first-time buyers finding it so difficult to save now?
Well, it's an accumulation of a lot of factors, Caoimhe, but I think the pinnacle of the issue really is the housing shortage and the renting crisis. You know, it's been a really big deal. So over the last decade, rental figures have skyrocketed. So for instance, in Dublin, to rent a room, we're not talking about an apartment or anything like that. We're just talking about one single room. The average price you're going to be paying is around €700 to €800. So this eats up a significant portion of young people's income, making it nearly impossible to save. Like, I know personally myself, I have friends who are paying a third or half of their income to their rent. So it's not going to get better either. A lot of private landlords are leaving the market. There's going to be even less supply, and with less supply, you get higher prices as well.
Now, you just mentioned there that rent can take up to a half or a third of people's income. And it just shows the strain that the rental market puts on first-time buyers' saving capabilities. And it's a really serious issue. If we look at the average cost you mentioned a minute ago, Fionn, to rent a room in Dublin is around €800. This €54,000 deposit is the equivalent to 67 months' rent.
How many years is that?
Yeah, if we put that in years, that is 5.5 years worth of renting has to be built up to save for a deposit.
And like, lest we forget, it's not just rent that's expensive in this country. Pretty much everything is, and we're in the midst of a cost of living crisis as well. So it's not just rent that's eating into people's income. It's everyday bills, it's your groceries, it's running your car, even buying your diesel or petrol nowadays will set you back as well. So that's even less opportunity for people to save nowadays.
Yeah, it seems that there's no escape from these hefty price hikes that people are facing, and they have little to no respite. If we look at people who are able to save. So if you're fortunate to be able to save, you're still getting little to no return on your savings. Currently, saving accounts provide close to 0% return on your investment.
And especially with inflation, probably going to be up like 5% at least for the next year, or above 5%. You're pretty much losing money if you're putting money in your savings account.
If first-time buyers aren't being rewarded for putting away savings, Fionn, how else are they managing to put together a deposit?
Well, Caoimhe, I'm sure you've all heard the very infamous example of the bank of mum and dad. I read recently that it was 42% of all deposits were subject to help from their family. I don't know if it's a case of everyone can avail of that.
It seems that people who are able to avail of this opportunity and get familial support are a step ahead. But we do want to keep this positive, Fionn.
Of course, yeah.
Keeping all that in mind, do you have any words of advice for first-time buyers who are trying to save for the deposit or preparing to apply for a mortgage?
Well, yeah, I think it's very important in all these aspects to always look at what government support can give you as well. So we have government support schemes available to first-time buyers, such as a Help to Buy scheme, which helps you put together your deposit, and then we have the First Home scheme, which is a shared equity scheme with the government in your eventual house and mortgage. Both of these have had a very large uptake. They're very popular, obviously, with everyone needing help to put together a deposit. But there's also other options, like especially considering a mortgage broker service like bonkers.ie. A broker will find the best mortgage rate for you in the market, liaise with your lender, and it really helps to speed up the process as well.
Yeah, and that's especially important to have a smooth process that isn't getting delayed when we have rates increasing all the time and you want to draw down your mortgage as soon as possible. And as well as this, the Central Bank of Ireland also relaxed its lending rules in recent months for mortgage applicants. So first-time buyers can now borrow up to 4 times their income rather than the previous 3.5 times their limit, which was done to really help people get their foot on the property ladder. So now that we have found out a little bit about the Irish mortgage market, Fionn, I'm going to actually sit down with Patrick Callan, a mortgage advisor here at bonkers.ie, to find out what exactly lenders are looking for in mortgage applicants. Welcome to the podcast, Patrick.
Hi, Caoimhe. Great to be here.
Thanks so much for coming in. Now, you're a mortgage advisor at Bonkers Mortgage Broker Service. So can you tell me a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, no problem. So as a mortgage advisor at bonkers.ie, so I help arrange mortgages for first-time buyers, movers and those looking to switch mortgage providers. So we're a mortgage broker, and as such we're completely impartial, and we deal with all major lenders on the market. So we'll compare the market for you, saving you a lot of time and effort in the process, and we'll find you the best deal based on your particular circumstances. As well as that, when taking out a mortgage, you'll need to take out the likes of home insurance and mortgage protection. So we can assist you in setting up these policies, so we can really be your one-stop shop for everything mortgage related.
Certainly, you do sound like a one-stop shop for everything. Now, let's say I am going to apply for a mortgage. If I want to apply as a first-time buyer, what can I do to make my application as attractive as possible to a lender, Patrick?
Well, good question, Caoimhe. The first thing I would advise is that before you do anything, I'd reach out to a mortgage advisor or a mortgage broker at least 6 months before you're looking to apply. They'll be able to advise if you're mortgage ready or not, and be able to kind of spell out exactly what you need to do to get yourself approval if you're not ready. But back to your question there's certain things that any lender will look for in an application. So they look at your income, they look at your what's known as repayment ability, they look to see if you have your deposit in place, they'll look to see that your accounts are well managed, and they'll look for you to have a clean credit history.
Okay, so can you go into a little bit more detail on those aspects for me, Patrick?
Yeah, no problem. So in terms of the income, they'll want to see that this is sustainable. Ideally, you will be in a permanent position and pass your probation. Now, there can be exceptions to this rule, but it's very much on a case-by-case basis. So under new Central Bank of Ireland rules, first-time buyers can now borrow up to 4 times their salary. Now, that doesn't automatically mean you're going to qualify for 4 times your income. This amount may be impacted by a number of things, like the level of net disposable income you have, if you have any other loans or childcare commitments and so on.
So you mentioned repayment capabilities. Can you give me a bit more insight into that?
Yeah, no problem, Caoimhe. So what the lender will look for before they offer you the loan is they'll basically look for evidence that you can afford to repay it. So to assess your ability to repay the mortgage, they're going to look back over the previous 6 months, and they want to see evidence of this through rent or savings or a combination of both. So if you are unsure of how much you need to be saving to qualify for the mortgage you want, you can use our mortgage calculator on bonkers.ie to see what your repayments will be. Some lenders carry out what they call stress tests as well.
What's a stress test? I've never heard of that.
So a stress test is basically where they add on 2% to your interest rate to see if you could afford the repayments if rates were to go up by that much. Now, that's obviously particularly relevant with rates going up at the moment. Now, to pass the stress test, there's a general rule of thumb to try and save 1.3 times your repayment. Now, to keep things simple, say if your repayments were, for example, €1,000 a month, aim to save at least €1,300 a month for at least 6 months, and you'll be passing the stress test and showing the affordability required.
I see.
So another thing they'll look for, Caoimhe, is they look for you to have your deposit in place. So as a first-time buyer, you'll need to have a 10% deposit in place. This can come from savings, a gift from family member, or the Help to Buy scheme if you're looking at a new build, or a combination of all this. They'll also look for your accounts to be well managed. So they want to see that your accounts are well managed and you have basically control over your finances. They'll also look for you to have sufficient funds in your accounts to cover any direct debits. Another point I'll just make, if you're renting, try and label your rent and transfer the rent out on the same date every month, just so it's consistent for the lender to see. And then as well, another thing they look for is they look for you to have obviously a clean credit history, ideally with no previous arrears. So it's a good idea to get a copy of your credit report from the Central Credit Register before applying for a mortgage. Now, if you do have any previous credit issues, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a no. There may be good reason why this happened, like an illness or redundancy. So if there is a good explanation for this, Caoimhe, it's still possible to get approved.
Right, so you mentioned there labelling your rent, Patrick. What if you pay your rent in cash? What can you do?
Well, it may or may not, Caoimhe. In this case, what I'd recommend is that you withdraw the cash from the same account on the same dates every month, so it's consistent for the lender to see. I'd ask your landlord to provide you a copy of your rent book so you can evidence the rent being paid, and you'll also need to provide a copy of your tenancy agreement. If you can't provide this, they probably won't take the rent into account towards your repayment ability, and you'll be relying on your savings to bridge that gap. So just in summary, to make your application as attractive as possible, what they look at your income. Is this sustainable? Your repayment ability. Is this evidence over the last 6 months? Do you have your deposit in place? Are your accounts well managed? Do you have a clean credit history? If the answer to all of these questions is yes, it will make your application as attractive as possible and you shouldn't have an issue getting approval.
So, Paddy, I've done everything that you just listed there to make my application as attractive as possible. Now, I go to the bonkers.ie mortgage comparison tool, I input all my information regarding the mortgage I'm looking for, and I submit an inquiry to the mortgage broker service. What can I expect to happen next?
So what will happen is you'll then receive a call from one of our mortgage advisors. It may be myself or someone else on the team. So on that initial call, we'll establish if you're in a position to apply for a mortgage or not. So we'll run through details of, say, your employment, your incomings, your outgoings, to be able to establish if you are in a position to apply and potentially how much you could receive approval for. So if you are, we'll then find the right mortgage for you. For some, this may be the highest approval amount. For others, it might be the lowest interest rates. Others may be interested in cashback or a speedy process and so on. The point is, we'll find the right mortgage based on your particular circumstances. We'll then send you out links to our portal where you can upload the necessary documentation to get your application started, and from there we'll be with you every step of the way right through to drawdown.
And what are the red flags that lenders look out for in an application?
Yeah, so there's certain things, Caoimhe, that they don't like to see. So one is, say, gambling in the accounts. Now, an odd bet here and there won't be a deal breaker, but just try to avoid it if you can. Another thing, they don't like your accounts to be under financial pressure, so try to avoid being down to your last euro every month or being over-reliant on the likes of credit cards and overdrafts. If you are saving into a separate savings account, try to avoid making withdrawals from that, because that will bring down your repayment ability, which can in turn lower the amount that you'll get approved for. Another thing which is a red flag is any previous credit issues. So if you've missed any repayments on any previous loans, that can definitely be a red flag and can result in your application being declined.
It seems that many people believe that if you're a single mortgage applicant, that it's nearly impossible to get a mortgage in Ireland now. Is that true?
No, that's definitely not true, Caoimhe. So we see first-time single applicants getting approved regularly, so there is hope, but there is no denying that it's more of a challenge as they're relying on just their income.
So what can a single applicant do to increase their chances of approval?
So when it comes to any single applicant, they'll need to be very disciplined when it comes to their savings. So they may have to save harder and for longer than your typical couple applying for a mortgage. There may have to be a bit of compromise involved, especially with the way house prices are going at the moment. So you may not be able to afford your dream home in your dream location, but the good news is there is a number of schemes out there designed to help you in purchasing a new build property if that's what you're looking for. So you'd have the Help to Buy scheme, which is essentially a refund of your income tax over the last 4 years, and it's up to a maximum of 30,000, subject to 10% of the purchase price. You'd also have the First Home scheme. So the First Home scheme is basically designed to bridge the gap between your loan amount and your deposit and the purchase price of the property. So through this, you can receive up to 30% funding towards the purchase price, or 20% if you're using it in conjunction with the Help to Buy scheme. So as I say, it's definitely not impossible for single people. It might be a long road and a little painful at times, but it will all be worth it when you're getting the keys to your own home.
exactly. So, Paddy, before we go, why should somebody go to a mortgage broker like bonkers.ie instead of just going directly to a lender?
Well, that's a good question, Caoimhe. There's several reasons, too many to list. I'll give you a few. First of all, you have choice. We'll help you get mortgage ready. It's personable. It's a completely digital service. And finally, best of all, it's free.
So could you give me a little bit more insight into what this means?
So the first point there, choice. So as a mortgage broker, we'll look across the entire market. We don't favour any lender over another. We'll find you the right mortgage based on your circumstances. Alternatively, if you go directly to one of the large banks, they can only advise you on their products, which may not be the best offer out there or most suitable for your needs. We'll also help get you mortgage ready. So we'll be able to determine if you're mortgage ready or not from our initial call. If you are, we'll guide you through the process and get your approval. If you're not, we'll let you know exactly what you need to do to improve your chances of getting approval in the future. The other one now, it's personable. It's a more personable experience than going through a broker. So if you go through to us, you'll be dealing with, say, 1 to 2 people throughout the entire process. I used to work as a mortgage advisor in a large bank, and I know a particular source of frustration for people was they could be dealing with 10 to 12 different people throughout the process, constantly have to repeat themselves and so on. That's not the case with bonkers.ie. As I said, you'll be dealing with 1 to 2 people who'll know your application inside out. It's also a completely digital service, so we have a very user-friendly portal where you can upload all the documents required, and anything you do need to sign can be signed digitally, so there's no need to be printing and scanning documents and so on, which will make everyone's life a lot easier. And then best of all, it's free. Some brokers do charge a fee, but we don't. So the way it works is if you draw down on the mortgage, the lender will pay us a commission, but there's no additional cost to yourself as the customer. And for anyone who has bought a house will know that there's enough costs involved between your legal fees and your stamp duty, valuations, surveys, etc. So it's nice just to have one less cost to worry about.
As they say, every little bit helps, Patrick. Well, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Caoimhe. It was a real pleasure.
And I think everyone will really appreciate all the advice you've given, and everyone's mortgage application will be in tip-top shape going forward.
That's the hope.
Bonkers.ie is a one-stop shop for saving on all your household bills. Switch and save today across a range of energy, broadband, banking and insurance products with our free, easy-to-use tools.
So now that we've learned how to make our mortgage application as desirable as possible, it's time to sit down and get the inside scoop on what it's really like to apply for a mortgage. So I want to welcome Oliver Clarke to the podcast.
Hi, Quiver. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you, Oliver. Now, you're currently looking to apply for a mortgage or doing the mortgage application process. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and your experience so far?
Yeah, so my name's Oliver. I'm 29. Myself and my partner are currently in the process of applying for a mortgage and looking to buy a home. We started this journey back in October of 21. So we're currently looking to purchase a home in Offaly.
Very nice. So what made you decide to get a mortgage and take that plunge?
My partner and I had been renting an apartment in Kildare for 1 year, and our lease was coming up to an end. So it was just, didn't want to be paying the dead money for that. Decided to look into getting a mortgage. So we were originally looking in the Dublin and Kildare. We're originally from Kildare, so in the surrounding counties, but realised that wasn't feasible financially. We started to look a bit further afield, and then realised if we wanted to save enough as well, we maybe had to leave where we were renting and move somewhere that was a bit cheaper, but also try out the area that we were looking to buy in. So we moved out to Offaly.
So Oliver, you mentioned that your finances was a big challenge that you and your partner had to face when trying to purchase a home. Are there any other hurdles that you guys have faced while trying to get your foot on the property ladder?
Yeah, so we did hit a few hurdles. The biggest one was actually quite early on in the process. Discovered in early 2022 that I wouldn't actually be eligible for a mortgage. I was working for a bank for 4 years. They were actually leaving the market, meaning that date in the future is going to be made redundant. So from the lender's point of view, they see me as not being in permanent employment.
I see, and I guess that's a big shock because you were still working, and this is going to be relevant to a lot of people because there's a lot of tech layoffs going on at the moment.
Yeah, it was certainly news to me. So basically we went to a financial advisor before we submitted the application. He was the one who actually filled us in about not being eligible. That actually pushed our mortgage application process back because I needed to find a new job, be made permanent, and that takes at least 6 months.
And was there anything else that the mortgage advisor pointed out to you that you guys had to improve in order to have a good mortgage application?
So basically when we were with the mortgage advisor, he pointed out our savings habits. So although we were saving, we were trying to save around $1,000 a month on top of our rent. We were dipping in and out of this and didn't realise how that would look in the eyes of the lender. So basically how the inconsistent savings and the withdrawals would affect the overall affordability.
So you mentioned earlier that you aren't going to purchase in Dublin due to prices, and a lot of other people might be in the same position as you guys. So what made you decide to focus on Offaly of all places to buy a home?
We were looking for areas basically within our budget. Dublin and surrounding counties were actually just too expensive. We're both from Kildare, so that's kind of where we were looking at, just purchasing the area where we were from. We did then find a lovely town in Offaly that had the amenities we wanted, like gyms, restaurants, cafes, crucially good transport routes. With the train there, and basically it has a bit of life in the town, which was kind of what we were after too. So we can both now commute to Dublin on the train. It's also opened up the likes of Galway, which is now a possibility for working. You never would have considered that before. A lot of places now have, the hybrid working, a few days at home. So it really opens up the doors for working anywhere in Ireland nearly.
And what has your experience been with viewing houses so far?
So originally we were looking at new builds. We were considering availing of Help to Buy. It turns out that the new builds were just a bit too expensive for ourselves, so we're looking at second-hand homes now going forward.
What have you done to get mortgage ready?
Yeah, so there's a few things we did to get mortgage ready. So one of the main ones, organising our finances. So between myself and my girlfriend, we split the responsibilities. So she looks after the likes of the day-to-day bills like shopping lists, doing up budgets for that. I'd look after the utilities, direct debits, and anything like that. Then cleaning up our bank accounts. So automating our savings, basically setting up a standing order that the money goes into our savings each month. Of course, finding a new job where I'll be made permanent and getting a permanent contract was obviously a crucial one. And then reassessing our priorities, looking outside of Dublin, Kildare, Wicklow. Also to give ourselves a really generous timeline, because we originally started in October 2021. We knew it would take a few months. We thought it would be much quicker than what it would be.
And Oliver, before you go, what are your 3 top tips that you would like to give to other first-time buyers?
Yeah, so definitely say go to a broker, talk to a mortgage advisor well in advance of your application. Automating your outgoings, so setting it up that your finances are just taken over, and again, maybe it's a personal preference. So using direct debits, standing orders and the like. And then consider other locations. So especially for us, get hung up on Dublin and you think it's the be all and end all. There is other options out there.
Thank you so much, Oliver, and I wish you the best of luck with your mortgage application process.
Thanks very much.
Whether you're a first-time buyer, home mover, or mortgage switcher, you can get your mortgage with bonkers.ie using our free mortgage broker service. Our mortgage advisors will be with you every step of the way, from approval in principle to your mortgage drawdown.
So before we sign off of the podcast, we have Fionn back here to do my favourite part of the whole episode. We're going to test Fionn's knowledge on some first-time buyer facts. Are you ready, Fionn?
No.
Okay, great. So the average first-time buyer in Ireland, we know, is 34 years old. Currently, Switzerland has the highest first-time buyer age in Europe. Can you guess what that is?
I'm guessing somewhere, but probably about 39.
So the average age in Switzerland to buy a home is 48 years old.
I hear.
Yes, it's very high. And then following that, we have Spain, which is 41. However, the UK and Germany are at 34 like us, so a little bit more normal. And then we have Belgium coming in quite young at 27, which is my age. And I'd love to have a home, but there you go.
Move to Belgium, so.
Yeah. So now I have a little bit of a Leaving Cert Maths question for you, Fionn.
Great.
So if a Starbucks tall latte is €470, okay, and I'm going to cut out my daily latte to help me save for my €54,000 deposit, how many lattes would I have to stop buying to be able to afford this deposit?
Well, 10,000 would be 47,000, wouldn't it? So something over that. Let's go for 11,000.
Okay, you're disgustingly close, which I am not a major fan of, but it's around 11,500 lattes.
Go on.
You would have to stop buying in order to be able to save this deposit. So let's
Okay.
get started on that.
Yeah.
Now, another way that we could save for our €54,000 deposit if we're going to cut savings is to stop buying our Netflix subscription.
Oh, yeah.
So as we know, Netflix is around €10 a month. So how many years of Netflix subscriptions would we have to stop buying in order to save for this mortgage deposit?
So it's 120 a year by €54,000. 500 years.
I don't like this because you clearly did higher level maths.
What?
So,
am I correct again?
No, you're not, but you're really close. So it's 450 years of Netflix we would have to stop buying to be able to afford our deposits.
I think we just confirm I'm maths genius now. Is that okay?
We're just going to move on.
Okay.
So here's a little one now that maybe you didn't know. True or false? In Ireland, we have a credit score.
We have a credit history, but we don't have a credit score because that's American, I think, isn't it?
So you're bang on, Fionn. We don't have a credit score in Ireland. It is an American thing, but a lot of people, when they're applying for a mortgage, think that they will be asked about their credit score. They won't. Your lender will check your credit history, though, through the Central Credit Register. And this is just to ensure that you haven't missed any loans or have a history of poor repayments. And this will give an indication to them that you aren't able to financially meet your commitments. And lastly, true or false? It's still possible to get a mortgage if you've been refused by multiple lenders.
I would say true, but you might have to pay a lot more.
So the answer is true. If you've had 2 mortgage applications refused, but are still meeting other certain criteria, you may qualify for a local authority home loan, which will allow you to purchase a property in Ireland. So that brings us to an end of our quiz round, Fionn.
Thank God.
So you can stop sweating. You did way better than I thought. So well done.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go and redo my leaving cert now.
And that brings us to the end of our episode on how first-time buyers can get their mortgage application in tip-top shape. I want to give a special thanks to Fionn, as well as our guest speakers, mortgage advisor here at bonkers.ie, Patrick Callan, and first-time buyer Oliver Clarke, for giving us his first-hand experience on saving and preparing to apply for a mortgage. Lastly, I want to give a shout out to our research and editing team, so thank you Sarah, Tio and Zoe. And remember, if you're a first-time buyer, switcher or looking to move home, you can apply for a mortgage through our free mortgage broker service at bonkers.ie, where our advisors will be with you from when you get your approval in principle until you draw down your mortgage. You can also purchase your mortgage protection and home insurance on our website and find the best energy and broadband deals and more on the market. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the bonkers.ie podcast on your podcast app of choice and follow us on Instagram for our top mortgage application and personal finance saving tips. Bye for now.